Hi, Todd VanDenburg here with VanDenburg Capital Management and another Uncommon Sense update. So, if you're watching this update, you read the headline, so I'll cut to the chase. Yes, I agree with Elizabeth Warren. So, what does that mean? I mean, some of you are probably freaking out right now. You might think that, somehow I've lost my mind, but a couple of months ago, maybe it was a couple of months ago, there was a Senate hearing where the Fed Chair Powell sat in front of Congress and Elizabeth Warren asked him some pretty simple, straightforward questions. Those questions had to do with, hey, as you're raising interest rates pretty aggressively, uh, are those actions going to result in lower gas prices? He said no. She then said, okay, how about lower food prices? He said no. Well, then this morning, I'm listening to her on a CNBC interview, and she went into greater detail about her concerns with what the Fed is doing. And this is where I fundamentally agree with what she said today. As she was talking with the interviewer on CNBC, she was making the case that since raising interest rates, even according to the Fed chair, are not going to lower interest rates, or even marginally, if they do lower them just a little bit, there are real potential downsides to the aggressive nature of these current interest rate increases. And things like, businesses deciding that it's too expensive to get capital, so they're going to reduce staffing, and that puts more people on unemployment. And if the unemployment rate goes up, have we really helped as many people as we think if you're putting people out of work because you're raising interest rates too quickly? And that's where I fundamentally agree with her. I think that the Federal Reserve is completely missing the potential impact of rapid rate increases on the U.S. economy. Now, I'm not saying that interest rates, well, first off, when we're talking about Fed monetary policy, there's this concept of is money tight or is money easy? And what that means is if interest rates are super low, then the monetary policy is considered pretty easy or accommodative. And if interest rates are high, then it's considered, the Fed policy is considered tight. So we're neither of those right now. Interest rates aren't at zero anymore, but they're also not anywhere near historic highs or even the average of the last 50 years. So the Federal Reserve needed to raise interest rates. I believe that. But I don't believe that they need to be raising them as rapidly as they are, because as I've talked about in prior updates, the reason for inflation is not because interest rates are too low. The reason for inflation is the federal government borrowed an extra $5 trillion, adding it to our national debt in order to address shutdowns, lockdowns, to give people money as a result of COVID. But it's real, right? They borrowed that money. At the same time, they shut down the economy, so our ability to provide goods and services is severely hampered. And that's the definition of inflation, right? You have too many dollars chasing too few goods and services, and so prices rise. So I agree with Elizabeth Warren in that I think the Fed is being too aggressive. I think they're moving too quickly. They could continue to raise interest rates, but I think they should take a much slower approach from here on out, and take a wait and see approach on what the potential unintended consequences of these rate increases might have on the actual economy. We are seeing real impacts right now in the housing industry. There's way fewer loan applications. Building permits have sort of stagnated. So we're going to watch those numbers pretty closely, but there could be unintended consequences if the Fed continues to tighten as aggressively as they do. Now, while I'm agreeing with people in Washington, I might as well agree with the Biden administration. Over the last couple of days, they've been trying to. I sort of agree, so I'm not in 100% agreement with what I'm about to say. So the Biden administration has been talking about how if the GDP shrinks for 2 consecutive quarters, well, we won't really be in a recession. And they're trying to change the definition of recession. Um, but their concept is that really the recession, if we're in one, if we do see 2 consecutive quarters of GDP shrinking, it's not like any other recession that we've had in the past. And I've talked about this in prior updates. And so this is where I sort of agree with the Biden administration. They're just trying to, instead of just saying, this recession will be like no other because, the U.S., economy, businesses are still hiring, many things in our economy are still going well. We're still recovering from the pandemic lockdowns. But we may have pushed ourselves into a technical recession because we shut things down and the economy had no choice but to shrink, especially when the government stops adding trillions of dollars into the economy through borrowed money. So while I don't agree with the Biden administration trying to redefine what a recession is, I think that they should do a better job by just simply explaining, hey, even if we do technically fall into a recession, it's not that bad because this is like no other we've ever had. And it's the US economy, it's the private sector that's going to continue to accelerate. And if we're in a recession, it will probably be short-lived as we continue to get things back to normal, where industrial production exceeds pre-pandemic levels. So I don't agree with trying to change the definition, but I do agree that unlike prior recessions where we may have worried what it meant and that it was a bad sign of things to come, I don't necessarily believe that this recession, should we fall into one, it is actually any sort of a harbinger of continued bad times, unless, as I said earlier, the Federal Reserve continues to tighten interest rates so aggressively that they shut the economy down to the point where we're producing even fewer goods and services, and the M2 money supply is still elevated, way beyond where it should be right now. So yes, I agree with Elizabeth Warren. Yes, I sort of agree with the Biden administration. And that's just, if I have to be, honest to myself, which I should, sometimes I have to agree with people that I may not otherwise, under most economic conditions, agree with their assessments. But in this case, I absolutely agree. And I would hope that, people that are watching this update won't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, I don't like Elizabeth Warren or I don't like the current administration, so I'm going to disregard things that are potentially true. So that was maybe not as much data as I normally do. So if you have any questions about this, give me a call, post a message to this update, send me an email, however you want to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. I put these updates out so that people don't make sort of knee-jerk reactions to things that they might see in the media or fears that they might have. And so, try to be careful, try to get as much data as you can, and make sure that you're not being overly influenced by your potential bias one way or the other. So that was your update. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a like, give us a share, and I'll be back again soon with another Uncommon Sense update. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to be the first to hear of more Uncommon Sense updates like these, please click the subscribe button below. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again.